Hello there, and welcome to the Secular Lefty channel in my new series, A Secular Lefty Chat. In this series, we will discuss a wide range of topics with a focus on one or two main ideas per video. Many, if not all, these videos will be political. The past 10 years following politics has become a bit of a hobby of mine. Hasn't been great for my health, but as a citizen of the United States and human being in general, there's a responsibility to be an informed person. With that knowledge and sharing it with others, we as citizens can fight back against what is wrong and fight for what is right. But that, of course, has been a debate for centuries in this country. What is wrong versus right? For a country to function and have a strong social cohesion, there has to be agreement on what is wrong versus right. Republicans under Trump are now damaging as much of the federal government and social policies as quickly as they can, while Democrats sit back and do nothing. Today's political discourse and the past 50 years leading up to this have been corrupted by misinformation, outright lies, and bad actors willing to spread those lies and misinformation. People who are not concerned with making society a better place. They just want to better it for themselves and their close family and friends. These are the people who support the status quo and will do anything to stop progress on policies that improve the lives of all people. The greater the threat the policy is against their wealth, the more resources and money they will use to stop it from passing. Any good policy that Americans should have had by now, Medicare for all, higher minimum wage, rent control, renters protections, more funding for our schools and infrastructure, is just a small list of the things we should have had by now. Our politicians have been bought to do the bidding of their donors. Many of these politicians and people in media organizations are there just because they have no real beliefs of their own. Or if they do, they have no problem lying to the public on behalf of the status quo and their donors. Those with money and power have molded our society to protect them and their profits. So who is this they I am referring to? They are the oligarchs in this country. The oligarchs being a combination of the 800 robber baron billionaires, those of which who didn't work hard for their money. They have amassed their wealth through ill-gotten gains from a broken tax system. The oligarchs also include elected Republicans, many elected Democrats from the corporatist wing of the party. It is Republican organizations like the Heritage Foundation and Federalist Society, conservative political commentators, and others in the right-wing media sphere. All these groups have worked together for decades to damage our country, making your lives worse and economically more difficult as they amass money and homes and concentrate it into the hands of the few. It is them, not the people they scapegoat, who is the problem. It is not the immigrant. It is not the trans person. The problem is billionaires and all their politicians and media figures who do their bidding. As stated, the right wing did not work alone for this nightmare scenario to happen. As history has shown us before, for fascism to rise, it is also the result of a weak opposition party. The Democratic Party has failed to communicate a bold, cohesive message to inspire millions of more voters to vote for them instead of Trump. Over the decades, and to a greater extent in the 24 election, the Democratic Party has destroyed their trust among voters. In 2016 and 2020, they hurt this country by failing to nominate the strongest candidate in their presidential primary, who was Bernie Sanders. Bernie would have won in 2016, and in 2024 he'd be finishing his second term. But that's not the timeline we got. No, instead it's Joe Biden, who refused to step aside despite his declining health and competency, and not allowing a Democratic primary process to happen. Had the Democrats had an open primary, that alone may have given more voters reason to elect Democrats nationwide. Another problem, however, was Joe Biden's support for Israel to conduct a genocide of the Palestinian people for over a year also made it a little difficult for millions of people to vote for them. In 2020, Joe Biden received 81 million votes. In 2024, Kamala only received 75 million. What happened to those other 6 million votes? Where'd they go? There are many reasons why voters did not choose Kamala Harris, but I will state 2 reasons to summarize. The first reason is that around 3.5 million votes were not counted because of modern day voter suppression tactics. For those unfamiliar, there is a great journalist by the name Greg Palast. He has been reporting on these voter suppression tactics, the modern day Jim Crow, for years. For more details on that, check out Greg Palast's work and his new documentary, Vigilantes Inc. The second reason is just millions of Americans just didn't vote. While it changes every election cycle, it's around 85 million people who are eligible but choose not to vote. And again, while their reasons vary, it's simply summed up that the candidate just did not convince them to earn their vote. It is the candidate's responsibility to earn our votes. There is no responsibility on the voter to vote. Non participation is equally a choice. It's not a great one, but it's a choice. But none of that matters now. The election is over. Trump is sworn in as the 47th president, and it appears to be his world. We just live in it. Or maybe it's Elon Musk's world. It gets a little confusing who the president is from time to time. So, what is Trump's and Elon's goals for this administration and the Republican Party? Many of their goals are the same goals as those held by the fringe extreme of the Republican Party for decades. Nationwide abortion bans, dismantling Social Security and all government healthcare programs, destroying the Department of Education, and expanding U.S. imperialism. Just a few of their terrible policies. While once fringe positions in the party, it is now the ones who believe in those things are the ones with power and in charge. We are seeing the dismantling of government programs and organizations and attacks on our people, all under the disguise of protecting our country from immigrants. We are seeing a rise in authoritarianism, fascism, Christian nationalism, and white supremacy. There have been many over the decades who would tell us to avoid this path and give us warning. Here's one such example during an episode of CNN's show Crossfire back in 1986.
Can I make a statement about national defense?
Yeah.
The biggest threat to America today is not communism. It's moving America toward a fascist theocracy. And everything that's happened during the Reagan administration is steering us right down that pipe.
Oh, Mr. Zappa,
Yes, Mr. Zappa.
Yep, Mr. Zappa, and all others making that argument at that time, are correct. Whether it's theocratic fascism or Christian nationalism or white supremacy, American supremacy, under our original democratic ideals, this is not what our country stands for. Even though 77 million people voted for this, there are still around 160 million Americans who didn't. In the next elections, if we have those, then Democratic candidates must run on an actual policy platform to undo the damages caused by the second Trump administration. My objective with these chats is to discuss my beliefs in detail and provide an additional voice to counter the right-wing echo chamber that has damaged our nation and our planet. In the first video I posted, I discussed my ideal bill to address the economic and medical needs of all American citizens and residents. With videos in my Project 2029 series, I will revisit some of those topics and provide more information about each pillar. Eventually, I plan to expand that series as well, with more bills addressing other areas of public policy like education, infrastructure, renters' protections, to name a few. But that will take some time. Creating these videos has become a side project for me, a hobby. My way of trying to help by putting out my views and information to provide a framework for the next wave of politicians, whether they be Democrats or independents, to fight for and improve the lives of all people. The party doesn't matter, the end result does. Before discussing more about my beliefs in this framework, I first want to share some information about me, specifically the moments in my adult life that have impacted me to think the way that I do. I graduated high school in 2010 and didn't go to college after. I didn't have the money for that, didn't want to take out loans and go into debt, so I began working. I was hoping to find a job eventually to earn enough money to save and move out of my parents' house. That was an objective that would take about 4 years before finally finding a good enough job that provided that income. My first jobs were part-time, entry-level positions. jobs that would never be able to afford an apartment, which for a part time job is to be expected. These included a greenhouse I worked at for 2 summers. I did some wedding catering over some weekends. For a few months, I worked at a Kmart as a cashier. Not one of these jobs paid more than $8 an hour, and none of it was full time work. It was all part time. It was not until October of 2011 that I was hired for what became my first full time job with stable income. I was hired as a shift runner at a Wawa. For those unfamiliar, they're just a convenience store. They have a deli. Most of them are also gas stations. The store I worked at, I was hired to run their third shift, so working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. the next day. Overtime was common. I was often asked to come in earlier or work later. Some days doing double shifts when coworkers on first shift would call out. Some of the craziest and longest hours I did was during this time in my life. The work was relatively easy. Pay was around $9.50 an hour starting. Not a whole lot, but more than I've been making before. And with the overtime, the paychecks were okay. Unfortunately, not enough to live out on my own, though. Even when I was working at Wawa and picked up a second job by delivering for nearby Domino's, it still wasn't enough. Additionally, while the extra income was nice from the second job, it made me too tired to really do anything else in my life, even if I had the free time. For months, I would be working 60-hour work weeks. The majority of my time awake was at work, and if I wasn't working, I was sleeping. Not a great way to live life. It wasn't until February 2014 that I found a job with pay high enough to live on my own. This was a pharmacy called Philidor Rx Services, and they were a specialty mail order pharmacy. I worked in their prior authorization department, and because of this job, got to see firsthand just how repulsive, inefficient, and immoral our healthcare system is. Being a young, naive 20 something, I thought healthcare was a relatively simple process. If a doctor determined you needed medical care, be it a surgery or a prescription, then surely in the richest country of the world, that healthcare would be provided. As many Americans know, this is not our reality. Working in prior authorization, I learned how absurd it is to have a healthcare system that delays or denies healthcare, all for the reason of cost control and protecting their profit margin. Philidor's primary medications distributed were manufactured by a company called Valiant Pharmaceuticals, and their products were mainly dermatological medications. So, medications for skin conditions, commonly to reduce acne vulgaris, or more commonly known as acne or pimples, other skin problems and skin conditions resulting from clogged skin pores. So, no, the medication that Philidor was distributing, not necessarily life saving, but they still had medical purpose nonetheless. My job in prior authorizations would be helping patients by working with their insurance company and their doctors to get the forms filled out when prior authorization was required. Prior authorization is a common practice used by the health insurance industry as a cost control measure. It requires the patient's provider to justify the healthcare is medically necessary and if cheaper alternatives have been tried first. From the insurance provider's perspective, this process of prior authorization is to guarantee all claims paid for are medically necessary and appropriate for each patient. The idea is insurance companies must protect themselves from fraud by healthcare providers. The sad reality is this delay in healthcare because of paperwork results in tens of thousands of deaths every year in the United States. Deaths that could have been avoided had their healthcare not been delayed or denied. Yes, my job at Philidor dealt mainly with dermatological medications, but understand this process applies to all areas of healthcare. Areas such as cancer treatments, heart surgeries, or other life saving medications. As the discussion is happening between the insurer and provider, patients are dying as they wait for a decision to be made. All needless deaths despite their healthcare providers knowing those patients should have received their healthcare sooner. When a patient needs medical care, it should never be delayed because of disagreement about who pays for the bulk of the cost. Our broken system allows this to happen. What this broken system also allows for is for fraud to take place against insurers, which continue to provide them reason to continue methods like prior authorization. Philidor is a company that showed me an example of how that fraud is done. When doctors make a prescription and send it into Philidor, the claim was adjudicated. If the patient had insurance, would their insurance pay for the medication, or would it be denied or need prior authorization, resulting in the patient to pay out of pocket? For each patient, despite being given a prescription from a doctor, when and how they got their medication would vary. If insurance paid out the claim, great, we got paid, and the patient got their medication. If the insurance company denied the claim or required prior authorization, Philidor, to its small benefit, would still help the patient get their medication at a somewhat affordable price. The trick with Philidor is through their close ties with Valiant Pharmaceuticals. They would offer their main product, Solodine, for a low price of either with insurance at $35 or out of pocket for $50, as shown in this product overview. This was from Philidor in late March of 2014. This would allow patients to receive their prescription at a somewhat affordable cost, despite many of these patients being informed by their insurance provider that their prescription would require prior authorization or be denied. That medication, Solodine, if a patient had good insurance that either paid directly from the initial claim or paying after giving approval from the prior authorization process, we would charge that insurance company around $1,000 for a 30-day supply. Again, if the insurance company paid, they were charged $1,000. However, if the Solodine was sold for $50 for those patients who pay out of pocket, Philidor and Valiant were still making a profit on that medication. But if the insurance companies will pay what we charge, why not charge them $1,000? That was one method for Philidor to make vast amounts of money in the short time it operated. It was founded in January 2013 and operated through November 2015, a little under 2 years. The other method Philidor used was rapid market expansion through pharmacy acquisitions. By November of 2014, they had licenses to sell and ship medications to 39 U.S. states, and were working as quickly as possible to expand to those last 11. Some of the licensing was done by Philidor purchasing other existing pharmacies, or another method, by buying an option to purchase those pharmacies. This arrangement is known as a variable interest entity, or VIE for short. This article from CNBC titled, "Are Valiant, Philidor, and RNO all the same company?" They do a great job of going into that concept and describing it as it applies to the actions of Philidor. It was this web of loosely owned pharmacies that allowed us at Philidor to try to bend the rules of the system to get insurance companies to pay out. This was done by those in the adjudications department and us in prior authorization. When running claims, if it did not pay out by using Philidor's National Provider Identification Number, or NPI number for short, we were informed by management to use the NPI number of our other pharmacies. When one didn't work, we would rerun the claim using another NPI number of the pharmacies in our system, and we would go down that list until either the claim went through or they were all denied, and then it would get sent over to prior authorizations if that's not where it was already. Philidor treated getting paid out by the insurance companies basically as pulling a lever on a slot machine. With how the system was set up, I can't say they were wrong. There's far more information on the specifics of this company and the criminal wrongdoings of the heads of both Philidor and individuals in Valiant Pharmaceuticals. The most recent information on the subject I have seen was a press release by the Southern District of New York. This was on October 30th, 2018. Here's that article if you'd like to read more about it. I could keep talking about the failures of our healthcare system, but that will have to be a topic for another video. After my time at Philidor, I worked at some odd jobs to continue paying my bills, all of which were lower pay than my job at the pharmacy. At one point, I was working 2 jobs again, trying to save money as opposed to just living paycheck to paycheck. But again, my quality of life decreased, and I was either at work or I was sleeping. Any time not at work was minimal and reserved for eating, cleaning, or whatever other necessities I needed to get done at the time. In October 2016, I was hired for a small company that specialized in the wholesale of non ferrous metals. The job was an entry level quality position, and they trained me in the areas of quality inspection that I didn't know. With this new start and becoming proficient in measuring equipment such as micrometers and calipers, it put me down a path where, for the last 10 years now, I have worked in some capacity as a quality inspector in a metal manufacturing environment. While working in this field for 10 years, those have been spent at 4 different companies. Considering this is still the field I am in and just started a new job back in February of this year, I don't want to go into much more detail about who they are, but I will say this. The first 3 jobs all had ties with the military industrial complex. The first one would sell metal to Navy yards and for shipbuilding and submarine building. The second was a CNC machine shop making components for firearms and assembling firearms there as well. And these would be sold to law enforcement or the military. The third was another CNC machine shop making components for missiles and planes. Their customers included Honeywell, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing. Even though I was not the one making the components, I was still measuring to verify if those machine parts were made to the print. It still made me feel sick. I believe in peace and other lefty ideals, but yet here I am working in facilities making components for military contractors. My new job I'm at now, it's much less problematic. It's still a CNC machine shop, but they make components that are related to the manufacturing of semiconductors. A little more interesting and not connected as closely to the military industrial complex, so for that makes me a little happier. The point of me discussing my work history in the way that I have is to hopefully show you 2 things. The first is I got lucky. My success is not dependent on my hard work alone. After Philidor, I had little direction for what I was going to do for income. I was lucky to be hired by that metal wholesaler in 2016 and put me in the field that I continue to work in. And again, lucky that this field pays me enough to both survive and pay my ever increasing rent costs, thanks to RealPage. Again, another story for another day. When I was fired from my previous job in January of this year, I had 3 months of income saved up to find another job before going homeless, basically. Uh, if I had not been successful, the only place I would have been moving to was in my car. But I was lucky, things worked out. I was fired on a Monday, I applied for jobs that same day, had an interview on Wednesday, and it went well and they gave me a call back that same day. By Monday the next week, I was working again. That's not typically how job hunting works. Sometimes things don't align and it takes a bit longer. But for any number of reasons, when people can't find work, if there aren't jobs available or a person doesn't have the skill sets for the jobs that are, this is how they become homeless. It is not their moral failing. It is a system that has failed them. Our minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. It has not been increased since July 24th of 2009. Again, another topic to be explored in more detail in its own video, but I hope this is the point you walk away with. Our broken system plays a far larger role in your success or your failure, and no oligarch will ever admit that. By continuing to accept their framing, that the system that creates their wealth is fine, and all those who suffer is the fault of their own actions, or the immigrants or trans people, it allows them to walk out the back door with all of our money while we argue amongst ourselves and society collapses. These videos are my attempt to counter that narrative and make the case for how a competent Democratic Party, or any independent, can campaign on policies to regain the trust of the American people. It is not the party that matters, It is the politician and what they believe in that matters. And this brings me to what I believe in and what will be the topic for my next video. What I believe in is social democracy and social democratic policies. Next time, I will go into detail what that means, what types of policies are social democratic, and how will they help us. But for now, I'm going to pause it there. I want to thank you all for listening. If you liked what you heard, hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good YouTube stuff. It is greatly appreciated. Until the next video, thank you again for listening, and take care.